Hello and welcome. My name's Suzanne Dighton and today I'm going to be talking about art and history combined together as always. But before I begin, I just want to point out the piece of drawing that I've picked whilst talking about our character today is more based on historical art rather than Hollywood version of this person. So I hope you enjoy, and if you want to leave any comments below after the video, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
The reason I picked this subject today was because as a child, and even now, I absolutely love watching pirate movies and learning about the pirates that are behind the characters. And growing up, there was one picture that I used to see a lot, which is the picture I'm drawing today. It's not the greatest artistically, however, I think it kind of shows the fear of the man himself, and that is Blackbeard. Now, to talk about Blackbeard is quite a hard thing actually, because we don't know much about his early life. What we do know is we can guess around 1618 Blackbeard was born, and he was born in Bristol, and his real name, as far as we know, was Edward Teach, or sometimes known as Thatch. He began his life at sea in the British Navy before deciding to become a pirate after the war in Spain. He decided to become a pirate because during these times, life as an honest captain was hard and dangerous. It was much easier to become a pirate and steal from the honest sailor. Now, what we know is, in late 1716 he became a pirate and he joined the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold. When Hornigold retired, Blackbeard became commodore of a captured ship. Now, the ship that he captured was a French merchant ship, and it was a 40-gun warship, and he renamed this ship the Queen Anne's Revenge, and it soon became notorious throughout the legends of pirates. Now, during his time with Hornigold, he captured many ships and went to many battles, which made him have quite a big fleet at this time, and throughout the seas he was somebody not to be messed with. He mainly stayed along the Virginia and Carolina coast as well as the Caribbean Sea. Now, I'm going to point out at this point that Blackbeard wasn't the most successful pirate in history. He's just one of the most notorious pirates. But one pirate he did actually work with, who did become quite a famous pirate of his time, was Stede Bonnet. Now, even though we're talking about Blackbeard, I'm just going to step back a little bit and talk about Bonnet for a second, because he's quite relevant to Blackbeard's story. Bonnet set sail for Nassau in the Bahamas to the haven for pirates known as Pirates Republic. He was seriously wounded en route during an encounter with a Spanish warship. After arriving in Nassau, Bonnet met Edward Teach, the infamous pirate Blackbeard. Now, due to his injuries, he couldn't command his crew on his ship, so he handed it over to Blackbeard. Before separating in December 1717, Blackbeard and Bonnet captured merchant ships along the east coast of America. After Bonnet failed to capture one of the ships, his crew abandoned him and went on board the Queen Anne's Revenge. Bonnet then stayed on Blackbeard's ship as a guest, a long-term guest, or more of a prisoner in that case. And he stayed on until the summer of 1718, but then he went on to be pardoned by North Carolina's governor, Charles Eden, who will eventually come into our story in a little while. Now, the reason why Bonnet is quite important to Blackbeard's history is without knowing all this, we wouldn't know anything about Blackbeard. He wrote things down, and this is how we get to learn about Blackbeard and his crew. So back to Blackbeard. Well, he sailed, as I said, along the east coast of America and the Caribbean Sea, and his ship had a trademark black flag, or apparently so. The pictures that we normally see of his flag are of a devil skeleton with an hourglass in his hand, and he's got a dagger pointing at a heart. Now, I'm not sure how true these are, because that picture is only 100 years old and was published in a newspaper. He probably just went with a normal black flag, or a skull and crossbones, or a red flag with black on it. But we will never know this because it was never written down. However, we just know that if you saw his flag, you knew he was coming to attack you. Blackbeard's reputation started to grow in a short amount of time. With the number of attacks he conducted, and this was now called the Golden Age of Piracy. The more popular he got, the more extravagant his looks became. He would strike enough fear into his enemies to make them surrender quickly. Now, on his looks, you may see many pictures of him with smoke coming out of his beard. Well, first of all, he got his nickname because he did have a big, black, bushy beard. However, the smoke that you see, he used to put fuses into his beard and light them when he was going into battle, so people could see smoke coming from his beard, which put fear into them. Arguably, his biggest victory was against the HMS Scarborough, a powerful warship which brought Blackbeard even more status and respect among his fellow pirates. On September the 5th, 1717, King George I of England issued a proclamation of suppressing of pirates. This was known as the King's Pardon. This meant the British Crown was willing to grant to any pirate who surrendered themselves to the governor of their colonies, they would accept them to have a pardon. Which is all very well, but you don't think how Blackbeard would go for that, do you? Well, he did. After receiving a pardon from the governor of North Carolina in 1718, Blackbeard tried to give up his piracy, but he was way too invested at this point. Now, the governor at the time in North Carolina was Charles Eden, and Charles Eden and Blackbeard had come quite close. So when he accepted the pardon from him, Blackbeard just carried on being a pirate and doing his thing. Eventually, though, the governor of Virginia at the time, which was Alexander Spotswood, put a bounty on Blackbeard's head. He dispatched a British naval force under the command of Robert Maynard. After a 6-minute battle, Blackbeard was dead. He was shot 5 times and had many cuts on his body. Maynard cut off Blackbeard's head and hung it on the mast of his ship. It's quite ironic, really, if you think about it. Instead of like all other pirates, he was never hanged and he went to Davy Jones's locker instead. He died on the 22nd of November 1718. Now, before I leave you, I just want to clear up some facts about pirates and Blackbeard. Now, it's been believed, or people have said, that Blackbeard hid his buried treasure somewhere. I'm sorry, but this is a myth. As far as we know, he only went to North Carolina and travelled around the Caribbean Sea. It's very rare that pirates would have ever buried their treasure. The myth itself comes from the classic story, Treasure Island. Also, much of the loot that Blackbeard took consisted of barrels of sugar and cocoa, which would be worthless today if you'd buried them. Another myth that is surrounded in Blackbeard's history is that Blackbeard's dead body swam around his ship 3 times. This is very, very unlikely. It's just part of Blackbeard's legend, and it was known to be part of what Robert Maynard had said, just to maybe give his story a little bit of spice. And the last myth I leave you with, did Blackbeard leave a journal of his crimes? This one is not true. It's a common rumour because of Captain Charles Johnson, who wrote about piracy around the time of Blackbeard when he was alive. He wrote it down in his journal, but Blackbeard himself, he never wrote one. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be loading some more very soon. I try and stay as close to history as possible, and if you have any suggestions, please leave them in your comments below. Thank you.